In 2018, two men named Shane Joseph and Willie Ames were assigned garbage duty at a jail in Houston County, Georgia. It was a fateful day when they spotted their chance to escape. As they carried trash outside the prison walls, a guard watched over them, ensuring they did their job. Surprisingly, the guard allowed them some freedom. Sensing this opportunity, the men seized the moment and sprinted away, desperate for freedom. They ran for their lives as the guard called for backup. However, their plan didn't go smoothly. A few days later, Driver was discovered in a nearby apartment and Chapo was found hiding in a barn, 3 miles away. Both men were eventually caught and sent back to prison, serving additional sentences. In this captivating video, we witness an incredible escape story. Our focus centers on a man known as El Chapo, a notorious criminal and skilled prison escape artist. As we observe the footage, he exhibits intriguing behavior inside his cell. At one point, he leans forward, seemingly fixated on something on the shower floor. Then, without warning, he sits down and proceeds to remove his sandals. Astonishingly, in a blink of an eye, he vanishes. El Chapo's real name is Joaquin Guzman, and he had devised an ingenious plan to break free. Constructing a secret underground tunnel beneath the shower, he meticulously executed his escape. Unlike Andy Dufresne in The Shawshank Redemption, El Chapo didn't chip away quietly. Instead, he resorted to loud hammering. The guards outside chose to ignore the noise. The footage captures his restless pacing as he awaits the opportune moment. Once he finally emerges from the tunnel, we catch a glimpse of a smuggled mobile phone on his desk, which facilitated his escape. To avoid detection, he cleverly increased the volume of the television by his bed, masking any suspicious sounds. The tunnel he used spanned a mile underground, reaching a nearby property owned by El Chapo's wife. A stroke of luck, some might say. The construction of this tunnel was a masterwork, comparable to the drug smuggling tunnels his cartel built between the U.S. and Mexican borders. Illuminated and well ventilated, it even boasted a rail system. Remarkably, an adapted motorcycle transported the necessary tools for digging. El Chapo managed to evade capture for 2 years until he was eventually recaptured. Presently, he resides in a notorious American prison, his escape serving as a testament to his cunning and resourcefulness. In a detention center in Sao Paulo, Brazil, chaos erupted one morning. The guards were caught off guard as a well-coordinated riot unfolded. The majority of the 103 inmates seized control, taking 29 staff members, including the facility's director, as hostages. Within the facility's yard, mattresses were set ablaze, fueling the turmoil. Surrounding the detention center, riot police positioned themselves. Strangely, it seemed they all decided to take a coffee break simultaneously. Videos taken by amateurs and a police helicopter captured the astonishing scene. Dozens of inmates scaled the walls, descended trees, and dashed across the open field, resembling nimble commandos. Astonishingly, 54 inmates, over half of the population, managed to escape. However, their newfound freedom was short-lived. News outlets swiftly reported that 17 fugitives were promptly recaptured, leaving little doubt that the remaining escapees were swiftly apprehended. Sometimes you don't need to plan and stress to bust out of prison. All it takes is a stroke of luck. Michael Maldonado, a 25-year-old inmate, found himself in such a fortunate situation. While being transferred in 2018, he spotted the perfect opportunity. The police car had stopped at the prison entrance, and when the officer stepped out, Maldonado seized his chance. He made a break for it, attempting multiple escapes that day. Finally, he succeeded. It took some time to open the garage door, delaying the police officer's pursuit. Maldonado ran for the hills but was recaptured the next day. The cops were surely more vigilant this time. In 2013, a man named Benjamin Houdin Barbeau, 41 years old, managed to escape from the Saint-Jérôme Detention Center in Quebec. Alongside him was his fellow inmate, Danny Provençal. It's unclear if they became friends while in prison or earlier. Together, they planned their escape. The day arrived when their accomplices hijacked a helicopter near the prison. They forced the pilot to fly them there. Upon reaching the detention center, ropes were lowered for Barbeau and Provençal. They climbed their way to freedom, taking about 6 minutes. Surprisingly, the guards didn't shoot or catch them. Eventually, the accomplices flew away with the 2 men. However, a few hours later, all of them were captured, and the kidnapped pilot was found unharmed. In a Brazilian city called Recife, a group of inmates at an adult correctional facility decides to stage a massive breakout. They are determined not to be outdone by the recent events. An unidentified man swiftly places a package near an exterior wall, which suddenly explodes, creating a massive hole. Seizing the opportunity, the waiting inmates make a dash for freedom. The prison guards had previously warned the officials about the possibility of such an incident due to understaffing and inadequate guard towers. The surveillance footage captures a torrent of prisoners pouring through the crumbling wall. Surprisingly, some prisoners change their minds and retreat back inside while their fellow inmates sprint in the opposite direction. Though 40 inmates manage to escape, only one remains at large. 2 others are killed by the police, and the rest are recaptured. In the village of Louisiana, in the French department of Bouches-du-Rhône, stands a historic prison. Throughout its 2 centuries of operation, it has seen many changes but remains a symbol of a harsh past. This prison, built with advanced technology, was once renowned for its security. However, everything changed when Pascal Payet, a notorious criminal, made a daring escape. His feat captured the public's imagination and shed light on the prison's vulnerabilities. Pascal Payet, known for his helicopter prison breaks, grew up in France and fell into a life of crime. Despite multiple convictions and escapes, his determination remained unyielding. In our next case, we have Tori T. Smith, a woman from New Orleans who experienced an incredibly lucky break. It all happened in 2009 when Tori, just 31 years old at the time, was arrested and accused of battery and aggravated assault against her boyfriend. She was taken to the Orleans Parish Sheriff's Office for processing and was supposed to be placed in central lockup. However, fate had something else in store for her. Shortly after her arrival, an unidentified guard entered the jail and closed the door slowly. Strangely enough, he didn't lock it for some reason. He then asked another jail worker to let him through, but once again, the guy failed to lock the door. Tori, who was out of sight, noticed this mistake and quickly seized her chance at freedom. She cleverly requested to use the bathroom and simply walked out of the jail, passing through both open doors without anyone realizing. Without wasting a moment, she made a run for it. Tori managed to evade capture for a few hours until she was eventually found, reapprehended, and faced not only her original battery charge, but also an additional charge of escape. In a daring turn of events, Amber Gonzalez found herself in handcuffs at the Baymont Hotel in Moreland. Left alone in a holding cell, she had a moment to plan her escape. Armed with a cell phone meant for arranging her bail, Amber had a different idea. Instead of making a call, she decided to take matters into her own hands. With determination, she managed to free herself from the handcuffs, surprising the Waukesha police. Swiftly, she found an emergency exit, slipping away unnoticed. Seeking refuge at a nearby gas station, fate led her to a truck driver. However, her freedom was short-lived, as she was recaptured just an hour later. In this video, we witness an escape attempt that lacked proper planning. Blaze Ayers, a 28-year-old detainee, sought freedom at the Jackson County Sheriff's Office in Indiana. With nowhere to run, he barricaded himself in the medical room. Ayers climbed into the ceiling, hoping to find an exit. However, his noisy endeavor alerted the officers, who quickly located him. Sadly, he neglected to consider that ceilings cannot support a grown man's weight. Consequently, he crashed to the ground in front of the waiting officers, who were armed with tasers. Surprisingly, the tasers weren't necessary since Ayers was already tangled in electrical wiring. In December 2021, a man being taken to prison in Brazil made a daring escape. Viral footage shows him leaping out of the moving police car with his hands tied. The officers seemed unaware as they kept driving. Can you imagine their shock when they arrived at the prison without him? It's uncertain if he was captured again, but judging by his determined escape, it seems he never intended to return. In 2016, Rustam, a 25-year-old prisoner in Russia, was locked up for theft. Determined to flee, he squeezed through the tiny food service hatch, defying its size. Wearing only his birthday suit, Rustam maneuvered himself through. After dressing up, he stealthily headed for the exit, taking advantage of the absence of guards. Perhaps he discovered another opportunity to slip through a narrow window as he silently traversed the corridors. Convict Joe Green ran away from a doctor's appointment instead of returning to prison. A driver nearby recorded him dashing down the sidewalk, barefoot, and wearing his bright orange jumpsuit. A deputy chased after him, but amazingly, Green managed to escape for 30 minutes. Eventually, he ran straight to his old house, the obvious first place the officers checked. They caught him and added another charge for escaping jail. Running her fingers through her hair and looking completely overwhelmed, she starts to question her life choices. The next day, she gets caught, and the 3 guys she was helping are captured 5 days later after a dramatic confrontation with the police. A camera in the alley catches the men, dressed in all white, calmly escaping. Instead of some fancy Houdini trick, they rely on their charm and charisma. In Texas, a female prison guard is sweet-talked into assisting their escape, doing all the work for them. She disables the alarms, unlocks the doors, and provides a false head count. This gives them an 11-minute head start. The prisoners manage to acquire different clothes, all wearing white, and simply stroll out of the prison gate. Meanwhile, the prison guard nervously runs her hands through her hair, clearly stressed about the situation. She gets arrested the next day. The silver-tongued devils are eventually caught after 5 days, failing to woo any more prison officers with their charms. And that's number 3, the crossdresser. In 2018, a man named Quantrell Schwartzlow found himself in a difficult situation. He had been arrested for hurting a girl and was taken to Rock County Jail. Despite being 17, he faced the risk of jail time. In October of that year, while alone in the interview room, Quantrell decided to attempt a daring escape. He made a leap from a height of 12 to 16 feet, which was quite impressive. It seemed like he possessed the agility of a swimmer like Michael Phelps and the speed of a sprinter like Usain Bolt. However, his escape was short-lived, as he was found a few hours later at a friend's house in Janesville. In Romania, there's an incident captured on security footage. 2 men are being taken from a courthouse to a police van. One guy decides to escape by jumping over a fence, and the officer runs after him, leaving the van door wide open. The second man sees his chance and runs away too. The poor escort can't chase both. Reinforcements arrive, including a broom-wielding cleaning lady, but it's too late. One man is caught, but the other is still missing. The escort's job might be at risk. Breaking out of prison is no easy task. In 1995, a group of inmates at Rådshusø State Prison in Copenhagen, Denmark, decided to skip the elaborate planning and go for a direct approach. The prison was surrounded by a formidable 26-foot wall, but that didn't stop them. They broke through, and chaos ensued. Reports suggest that the inmates had meticulously planned the escape in advance, with the help of a former inmate on the outside. Cell phones were tossed over the wall to coordinate the operation. 12 prisoners, including murderers, bank robbers, and drug smugglers, seized their chance for freedom. They ran wild until the wall was reduced to rubble, but their taste of freedom was short-lived. A nationwide manhunt ensued, and within a month, all 12 escapees were recaptured. In an Idaho prison, inmate Nicholas Grove takes a daring risk. With a guard just 50 feet away, he dashes towards a fenced recreation yard topped with razor wire. Others who attempted this fence got hurt, but Grove effortlessly overcomes it. Escaping in broad daylight, he disappears into nearby neighborhoods. For over a year, police track his Facebook page, where he carelessly posts selfies and reveals his whereabouts. Grove may be nimble, but he's far from a genius. The mastermind of the escape reveals a secret compartment under the bunk bed. He uncovers a cut metal screen and slips into the ventilation system. Crawling through the pipes, he's joined by a man who later becomes a fugitive. They film themselves breaking out, using a smuggled cell phone. Scaling the building, they escape. For a week, they enjoy freedom, recording their exploits in a borrowed home. But their taste of liberty is short-lived, as they are recaptured and returned to prison. In the daring tale of Derek Etzel's prison escape, he finds an unlikely ally in his own mother, Glenda, and girlfriend, Tamara Lynn. With a clever plan, Derek positions himself near a small window connecting the jail to the waiting room. As a distraction is created, Tamara Lynn waits in a getaway car. Despite Derek's impressive escape, his mother's incriminating texts lead to their capture within a month. In Brazil, a prisoner attempted a daring escape by diving into a filthy communal toilet. Sadly, the escape itself wasn't filmed, but the aftermath was. Covered in feces, the failed escapee resembled a character from The Shawshank Redemption. 2 men eventually pulled him out, returning him to his cell, still covered in communal waste. In a prison, some crafty criminals were determined to escape. While some would go to great lengths to be free, others preferred a simpler approach. These two inmates fell into the latter category. They plotted their escape meticulously. They removed a few cinder blocks from the prison wall and squeezed through the gaps. To avoid suspicion, they covered the holes with posters, and in their beds, they crafted dummies using pillows and blankets to deceive the guards. With their plans set, they made a daring move. They threw a blanket over a tall razor wire fence, scaled it, and disappeared into the dense woods beyond. Despite their clever tricks, fate had other plans. A keen-eyed local resident noticed muddy tracks near a creek and informed the authorities. The escapees' luck ran out, and they were caught. Escaped murder suspect Casey White, towering at 6 foot 9 inches, threatens his ex-girlfriend's life. She remains hidden and anonymous, fearing his wrath.
If she is still alive, get the hell out. Run, run, run as far as you can and turn yourself in.
In 2015, White attempted to kidnap and murder her, earning a 75-year sentence. Shockingly, with the aid of a deputy, he escapes custody. Authorities scramble to find him, perplexed by the lack of sightings despite his unmistakable size. Now everyone wonders if the deputy, Vicky, is still a willing accomplice or a liability.
They've got weapons. That's what's scary. And does he really need Vicky anymore? That's the big question. Is she a liability? This guy's almost 7 foot tall, 260 pounds. She's 5 foot.
Absolutely, totally furious. I had no idea he was at the county prison at all. And for him to just be let out, it's horrible.
A furious son, Austin Williams, grieves his mother's death and condemns the flawed justice system. This is Rashad Hawkins. He's in the Meigs County Courthouse in Tennessee, facing jail time for not paying child support. The deputies try to detain him, but he escapes the courtroom. On the security camera, he hops over the railing and hangs on before letting go. The deputy doesn't follow. Watch his legs dangle from above. With nobody around, he quickly gets up and runs towards the exit. People from the floors below come to check the commotion, but he's already gone. For nearly 3 weeks, he remains on the run. Eventually, he's caught over 200 miles away. Apart from the Tennessee warrant, he faces new charges, like criminal trespassing, assault on a police officer, and resisting arrest. Hawkins's escape didn't end well, leading to more trouble for him. In the quaint town of Rochester Hills, Michigan, a courtroom drama unfolds as Jason Cordero receives his sentence. The judge's stern voice echoes, sentencing him to 90 days in jail for disorderly conduct and retail fraud. As the verdict sinks in, a peculiar sight catches everyone's attention. The court deputy, seemingly uninterested, walks away from the courtroom. Cordero seizes this opportunity and bolts out of the door with incredible speed. Onlookers gasp as Cordero sprints across the street, the determined deputy hot on his heels. Cameras capture the tense chase unfolding on the top right of the screen. Cordero's heart races, but fate intervenes, and he is ultimately recaptured in a nearby wooded area after a brief escape. Now, facing even more serious charges, including escaping lawful custody and resisting arrest, Cordero's situation has gone from bad to worse. The courtroom, once silent, now hums with the aftermath of an eventful sentencing. There was a man named Lee McNair who had a troubled past. Despite being intelligent, he found himself serving 2 life sentences and an additional 30 years for burglary. In 1992, he attempted his first escape through a ventilation pipe, but was caught the following year. However, his most notable escape occurred in April 2006 from a maximum security federal prison in Louisiana. Lee's prison job involved fixing torn mailbags, and it was here that he hatched his brilliant escape plan. Using materials he found, he created a makeshift escape pod with a breathing tube. One day, he hid inside the pod amidst some mailbags on a forklift. When the warehouse staff left for lunch, he seized the opportunity to flee. As Lee jogged beside the railroad tracks, a police officer stopped him, suspecting he might be the escaped convict. But amazingly, Lee managed to convince the officer that he was someone else, even without any identification. He claimed to be Robert Jones, a roofer working at a nearby hotel.
Do you have any form of identification on you?
No, man.
What's your name?
Robert Jones.
What's your address?
I don't have an address. I'm at the hotel. We're working on houses and stuff like that, the roofing.
The officer checked his story, but didn't find any evidence linking him to the escape. As Lee continued to jog away, the officer cautioned him to carry some ID in the future.
What is? We got an escapee.
Oh, where from?
Prison. Hey, this is Carl. Subject wear glasses? Nothing about glasses. How old is your guy? You're how old?
50. Born in 56.
Let me just verify. He says his brother's staying at the motel. Let me verify that. You know the bad thing about it?
What's that?
You're matching up to him.
Come on. We just got into town about a week ago, and he dropped me off to jog. I always jog about 12 miles a day.
I'm just doing my job,
I know
man.
you are.
If you do jog again in the future, carry some ID with you. Be careful, buddy.
Thank you.
All right.
Lee smiled and nodded, vowing to be more careful. And so, Lee McNair's daring escape earned him a place in history as a crafty fugitive, but he knew that he couldn't let his guard down as he continued on his journey to freedom. There was a clever young man named Frank Abagnale Jr. He had a unique talent for creating fake checks during his early adult years. Not just that, he was also a master of impersonation. Frank could effortlessly pass as a pilot, a university professor, and even a doctor. Interestingly, the doctor role turned out to be the easiest for him, despite it being the most challenging one. He supervised interns during the midnight shift, pretending to be a doctor. He confidently handled medical situations, even though he had no medical background. The interns respected him and followed his instructions. Unfortunately, Frank's crafty escapades came to an end when he was caught. He received a 12-year sentence and was sent to the Federal Detention Center in Atlanta. However, fate seemed to be on his side. When the U.S. Marshal forgot to bring his detention papers, the prison guards mistook him for a prison inspector contracted by the FBI. Using this fortunate mix-up to his advantage, Frank reached out to his friend Gene Sebring. Together, they devised a plan to create fake credentials for Frank. They made him look like an official prison inspector and an FBI agent. With the counterfeit identity as a prison inspector, Frank charmed the guards, convincing them to let him leave the prison in a car to meet his supposed FBI partner, Gene Sebring. And just like that, right under their noses, Frank Abagnale Jr. made his ingenious escape. Newly released surveillance footage reveals the dramatic escape of Eli Villalobos, a 28-year-old murder suspect in Oregon, from the courthouse. The video shows the moment when Villalobos managed to free his hands and legs from shackles just before he was about to stand trial on several serious charges, including second-degree murder in the killing of 33-year-old Artemio Guzman Olvera in 2021. Following his escape, a frantic 2-hour manhunt ensued as law enforcement officers searched for Villalobos. Eventually, he was discovered hiding under a blanket inside a closet in an apartment after a vigilant caller reported suspicious activity involving a man attempting to break into a nearby unit. The authorities successfully apprehended Villalobos and took him back into custody. Subsequently, he faced further legal consequences as he was indicted on 2 additional counts of first-degree burglary, in addition to a charge of second-degree escape. The day was August 4th, 2008, and something significant was about to happen for an inmate named Sarah Jo Pinder at Rockville Correctional Facility. Sarah, a 29-year-old woman, had reached her breaking point with imprisonment and yearned for a fresh start, away from her troubled past. Sarah firmly believed she was innocent, or at least mostly innocent of the crime she was accused of. Her life had taken a dark turn after she dropped out of Purdue University and got involved with questionable individuals. She fell in love with Richard Hall, a man with a criminal history, and shared an apartment with another troublesome couple, Andrew Cataldi and Tricia Nordman. The events leading to her imprisonment were tragic. On a fateful night in 2000, an argument between Richard Hall and Andrew Cataldi turned deadly, with both Cataldi and Nordman losing their lives. Sarah claimed she had nothing to do with the murders, but she was arrested, tried, and found guilty. Despite a lack of DNA evidence, she was sentenced to 110 years in prison. Determined to escape, Sarah enlisted the help of a corrections officer, Scott Spittler, with whom she had a sexual relationship. She promised him $15,000 for aiding her escape. On August 4th, 2008, she slipped out of her cell, changed into civilian clothes, and was driven out of the prison by Spittler. Her journey to freedom wasn't smooth sailing, though. She met up with another former inmate, Jamie Long, who played a role in her escape. Sarah managed to get to Chicago and live under a fake identity, but her dreams of a new life shattered when a neighbor recognized her from a TV show about fugitives. The police arrested her and she was sent back to prison. Sarah's case remains controversial, with some believing she was wrongfully convicted. Even the prosecutor, Larry Sells, who once likened her to Charles Manson, now believes in her innocence. Despite her relentless efforts to appeal her conviction, justice still eludes her. Now 43 years old, Sarah Jo Pinder continues to fight for her freedom, hoping that one day the system will right the wrongs and acknowledge her innocence. In the garage, a group of prisoners shuffles towards their cells, accompanied by guards. One lingers and stealthily slips behind a transport van, unnoticed by the oblivious guards. There he finds the key in the ignition, a stroke of luck. With the universe seemingly in his favor, he seizes the chance for freedom, starting the van and bursting through the garage door. But fate has a twist. The van crashes into trees, and his taste of freedom is short-lived. He is soon recaptured and arrested, a tale of a jailbreak gone wrong. Most steal cars to end up in jail, but he did it the other way around. In a small town, Sheriff Donnie Barrera talks about Nicholas Garrison, a 33-year-old man with a recent felony meth charge. During his sentencing, Garrison dashes out of the courtroom, with deputies chasing him. Deputy Ben Reno tries to catch him but injures himself in the process. Reno is recovering from fractured ribs and a mild concussion. The sheriff says Garrison may have changed his appearance, having shaved his hair.
I talked to him this morning. He's still in a lot of pain. He had some fractured ribs and a concussion, a mild concussion, I guess. And I think he said he broke 4 ribs. At the time of his escape through the court, he had bright dyed blue hair.
Garrison's former partner is also in jail for child endangerment. He faced a possible year in jail and a fine of up to $2,500. In Bradford, UK, Callum Fittner stands in front of the court. He's there to support his 17-year-old friend, who's on the other side of the door. The friend had been sentenced to 21 weeks in custody for stealing a mobile phone. With determination, Fittner presses the button for the automatic door, allowing his teenage friend to escape. The young escapee bolts out of the courthouse, and security officers quickly give chase. Fittner, on the other hand, takes a different path to leave the building, calmly walking down the steps as if nothing unusual happened. The teenager manages to elude the security officers and disappears into the distance. After 2 days of being on the run, the runaway teenager is apprehended and receives an additional 6 months in jail for the escape. Fittner faces consequences too. He pleads guilty to aiding and abetting his friend's escape and receives a 3-month jail sentence. It's a story of loyalty and a daring escape that ultimately leads to both friends facing the consequences of their actions. Despite Fittner's attempt to help, they find themselves on the wrong side of the law, learning a valuable lesson about the importance of making responsible choices. In a gripping tale of crime and escape, a man finds himself cornered by law enforcement agents upon his arrival at a certain location. The agents are ready to apprehend him, and he's being held in custody until his bond hearing next week. The situation takes a dramatic turn when we learn about an inmate who escaped from the courthouse last week. With a manhunt underway and already 4 people arrested in connection to the case, a 5th person, Walter, faces charges for assisting in the escape during a court hearing. However, despite his alleged involvement, Walter's lawyer claims he's been a model person while in custody.
This court is not satisfied, sir, that you would not be a danger to the community should you be released.
There is nothing in it for him. He's been a model person while in custody. We're actively working on his other case to get him exonerated.
Meanwhile, another woman charged with helping the escape gets emotional in court, while her security changes tighten due to the incidents. Authorities raise the reward to $50,000 for the rearrested escapee. Meet Tanner Jacobson and Cody Howard, 2 prisoners in Chehalis, Washington. They stand before the Lewis County Courthouse dressed in prisoner uniforms and handcuffed. Tanner faces charges of reckless driving and driving with a suspended license, while Cody is charged with second-degree burglary, first-degree trafficking and stolen property, third-degree driving with a suspended license, and 2 warrants for failure to appear in court. As they appear in court, there are no deputies present. Taking advantage of the opportunity, Tanner and Cody decide to make a daring escape. Cody goes first, followed by Tanner. A bystander almost attempts to stop them but is held back. Surprisingly, Judge Roy W. Buzzard springs into action, ripping off his robe and pursuing the escapees. With handcuffs and sandals still on, Tanner and Cody race through the 3rd-floor stairwell. The determined judge closes in on them, and the chase intensifies. Cody is soon captured, but Tanner manages to get away temporarily. Tanner reflects on his rash decision to run, admitting that he had a moment of panic. However, his escape is short-lived, as he is apprehended just a few blocks away.
I only get like 4 blocks, and then I stop. Like, I just stopped on my own. I'm like, what am I doing right now?
I said, what am I doing? What did I just do? I gotta go with it now. There's nothing, I can't stop right here. There's nothing I can do now. I'm screwed.
We were sitting there on the benches together, and he's like, I'm gonna run. It was just a split-second, like, decision. I don't even know why I did it. Like, I would be out of here if I wouldn't have ran.
Both men are charged with second-degree escape, and their sentences are handed down. Tanner receives 1 year and 1 day, while Cody is sentenced to just over 3 years behind bars. This daring courthouse escape proves that running from the law is never a wise choice. Justice catches up sooner or later. In a prison called Clinton Correctional Facility, 2 men named Richard Matt and David Sweat found themselves serving long sentences. Sweat was given life in prison back in 2002, while Matt was given 25 years to life in 2008. Fate brought them together at a shared workstation, and soon they hatched a daring escape plan. To begin, they asked to be moved to adjacent cells, making it easier to collaborate. Then they cleverly manipulated 2 correctional officers, Gene Palmer and Joyce Mitchell, to support their breakout scheme by gaining their affection.
Sweat was down there multiple nights, and he did most of the work. And they cut through the pipes. They were just persistent.
Armed with tools concealed in hamburger meat, including hacksaws and chisels, they secretly worked on their plan. The determined duo spent months digging holes in their cell's walls, little by little. By February, they had made significant progress, cutting through the thick steel. Their perseverance paid off when they reached the bottom floor and broke into a steam pipe. Sweating late into the night, they finally emerged outside the prison walls through a manhole. Their escape was nothing short of extraordinary, driven by sheer persistence. There were 3 prisoners at the infamous Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary in the 1960s: Clarence Anglin, John Anglin, and Frank Morris. Alcatraz had gained a reputation as the world's most secure prison, with 13 failed escape attempts between 1934 and 1961. But one day, Frank Morris came up with a plan to escape. He enlisted the help of the Anglin brothers and a car thief named Alan West. Their preparations took months, stealing spoons and saw blades to enlarge the ventilation ducts in their cells. Every night they worked quietly, using Morris's accordion music as a cover for the noise. They drilled small holes around the existing vents and cleverly concealed their activities. On June 11, 1962, the trio executed their escape plan. Wearing the fake heads on their pillows, they made their way through the utility tunnel. Unfortunately, Alan West's cell grill got stuck, and he was left behind. Undeterred, the remaining 3 slid down a pipe from the prison roof and disappeared into the night, making their way to the shore. The legendary escape of Clarence Anglin, John Anglin, and Frank Morris remains an enduring mystery in American history. Their daring attempt at freedom has captivated people's imaginations for decades. Hold on to our final clip, which is the most scariest and creepiest one. And if you like what you saw, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss out on our creepiest videos. In recent years, the transgender movement gained support. While we respect people's choices to be true to themselves, this guy may have taken it too far. Clavino de Silva, known as Shorty, was a notorious drug gang leader in Brazil. After serving a long prison sentence, he devised an escape plan. He had his 19-year-old daughter visit him and disguised himself as her. With fake glasses, a wig, and a mask, he aimed to be smuggled out while leaving his daughter behind. However, officials became suspicious, arrested him, and later found him dead in solitary confinement. Strange, isn't it? Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can stay updated with our latest videos.